Hey everyone! ChatGP Taylor aka Taylor here. Welcome back to the channel. Today will be a continuation of the This Venture Camp Top 5 series. This series counts down my top 5 lists of certain topics related to this venture camp. Last time, I talked about 5 ways that Isabel's immunity totem could affect Season 4. This video will look at something different. If there are any ideas for this series that you would like to see me play out, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. And with that, let's get started. Before I begin, make sure to like and subscribe if this video is to your liking, and make sure to comment down below if there's anything that you would like to see going forward. The topic for today's video is something that I thought about after I made my video about potential indie animation shows being inspired by real-life reality competition shows. And that topic is 5 potential DC pairings for a Race to the Place season. As a little refresher, Crystal's father Christoph is canonically the longtime host of a show called Race to the Place. And although there's not much information out there regarding this show in the This Venture Camp universe, I don't think it's a far leap to assume that this show could be the in-universe equivalent of real life's The Amazing Race and Total Drama's The Ridonculous Race. And considering that both of these shows aren't shy about including contestants from other reality competition shows in their world, I think it's reasonable to believe that if Odd Nation Cartoons decides to produce a season of Race to the Place, we could see some pairings consisting entirely of This Venture Camp characters. So, today's video will take a look at 5 potential DC pairings that I could see being included in a Race to the Place season. And before I begin, I want to make one disclaimer. For this video, I'm not going to include characters from Season 4 in this video. And the reason why is because these characters will very likely return for another season after Season 4, and thus, they will have another opportunity to build on their already existing stories. And since this video will feature me talking about potential pairings and the storylines that they could have while on the show, I feel like it makes more sense to build on the characters from Seasons 1 to 3, since they likely won't be getting more opportunities to build on their stories in future This Venture Camp seasons. Don't get me wrong, I could see a universe where pairings like Ivy and Zaid, Anastasia and Marisa, Logan and Richard, or even Benji and Tristan could end up as pairings in a Race to the Place season. But I would like to give them at least one more season to build up their story arcs before I start creating new ones for them. And with that, let's get started. This first pairing will probably cause some groans and complaining, but I feel like I have to include them, and it's Tom and Jake. I know that Tom and Jake already have a whole sitcom dedicated to them and they're about to get another season made for them, but if Odd Nation Cartoons were to include some This Venture Camp characters in a Race to the Place season, I find it hard to believe that they would exclude arguably their most notable couple to come out of the whole series. I think they like Tom and Jake too much to not include them in this kind of season, and including them would help attract a strong subset of their existing fandom to this new show. Now, as crazy as this may sound, I think there's a way for Tom and Jake to have a reasonable storyline if they were included in this kind of show. For Tom, I actually want to use his time on the show to showcase his physical capabilities. We know from Tom's spy and law enforcement experience that he's at least above average when it comes to physical ability. So, with a show like Race to the Place, which will likely be much more physically oriented than This Venture Camp, I feel like this is a good opportunity to showcase Tom's physical traits and to give him time to shine as a character. And considering that This Venture Camp is more of a mental and strategic game, and since Season 3 was more or less spent dunking on Tom as a himbo, I think giving him a season to shine would be a good change of pace. As for Jake, his storyline is a bit more nuanced, but I think it's worth considering. Now, I know that Jake is without a doubt one of the most polarizing characters in the eyes of the This Venture Camp community. Some people absolutely love him and some people absolutely despise him. And I'll admit, I've never been the biggest Jake supporter. That being said, there's something that I've noticed about the reception of Jake since Season 1 of Tom Jake aired. Even though some people absolutely despise Jake in This Venture Camp due to his stubborn and emotional nature, I feel like I've seen less hate directed towards Jake for his actions in the Tom Jake series. And personally, I've actually enjoyed how Jake has acted in Season 1 of the Tom Jake series. And this got me thinking. Is reality TV a poor environment for Jake to be in? Let's not forget that being on reality TV can be extremely stressful. With the stresses of living in the wilderness, not being able to trust anyone, and dealing with the paranoia of the audience hating you, I would imagine that it's not an enviable environment to be in. And while I don't think it's the cause of all of Jake's questionable decisions on This Venture Camp, I'm sure that it didn't help Jake's mindset in the season. So, I think if Jake does compete on a Race to the Place season, we could explore the idea that being on reality television really isn't a healthy thing for Jake. And there's nothing wrong with that. Reality TV isn't meant for everyone, and I think it would be good to have an arc where Jake comes to terms with the idea that being on reality TV isn't healthy for him, and that he's better off sticking to his normal life. Don't get me wrong, I know that there are a lot of people who would prefer this kind of screen time to go to characters who haven't had much of it, rather than characters who have arguably gotten more of it than any other characters in this universe. However, I can't imagine a world where Odd Nation Cartoons makes this series and doesn't include this couple in it. And if there's a decent story that can be written for them as they compete on the show, then I don't think I would mind them competing all that much. But of course, there's still plenty of room to include characters who haven't gotten that much screen time in this universe, such as the next two on this list. The second pairing on this list is a couple that I think massively deserves a chance for more screen time, and that's Will and Ashley. Due to Will's early elimination in Season 1 and his exclusion from Season 3, the only scenes that we really got to see regarding Will and Ashley's relationship is a brief confessional in the finale of Season 1, and a brief scene at the beginning of Season 3 where Will wishes Ashley good luck as she leaves to compete. So, I think having Will and Ashley compete on a Race to the Place season would provide an opportunity to showcase their relationship dynamics and add depth to their characters. And on top of that, I could also see the two of them having their own story arcs if they make it far in the season. For Will, since Ashley played a big role in helping him overcome his fears, and since the challenges in Race to the Place will likely present some sort of dangerous tasks, I could imagine Will going through an arc where he feels the need to prove to Ashley that he's capable of being a strong, confident man and that Ashley's efforts have in fact helped him. Eventually, his arc would resolve with Ashley assuring Will that she knows how strong he is, and that he doesn't need to prove anything to her, thereby bringing them closer as a couple. And for Ashley's storyline, since she still hasn't won money to help her family recover from their farm accident, we could easily write an arc where she deals with the stress of knowing that her family is counting on her to win money for her family. This arc could also open the door for us to see a darker and evil side of Ashley, fueled by her desperation to win money for her family and to not let anyone else's problems ruin her chances at it. We've already seen an angrier side of Ashley when she was dealing with Jake and Ali's feuds, so I can imagine how terrifying it would be to see Ashley fueled by the stress of her responsibilities. Of course, Ashley would eventually come around to realize that she shouldn't put the entire weight of her family's struggles on her shoulders, and maybe with Will's support, she could realize that her value as a person isn't based on whether or not she can win money in a competition, allowing Ashley to live a more stress-free life. That being said, I wouldn't be opposed to Will and Ashley winning this season if it existed, since Ashley could really use the money. But at its core, I just want to see Will and Ashley get more screen time. Will didn't get much of an opportunity to show himself while on this venture camp, and Ashley's screen time was largely tied up with her association with Fiore in Season 1 and Jake in Season 3. So, I feel like giving them an opportunity to show their personalities in another show would be a good use for their characters. And this is true for many characters that didn't get much of a chance to show their true colors, such as the next two campers on this list. The next two campers on this list might seem like an odd selection, but I'm prepared to justify it. And these campers are Dan and Drew. Unlike the first two pairings on this list, Dan and Drew didn't have a super close bond with each other while they were on the show. That being said, the two of them did work together for a bit back in Season 1, and their interactions weren't terrible. So, I don't think it's too unrealistic to believe that the two of them could have become friends after the show, and then signed up for Race to the Place together. Granted, if they did compete on Race to the Place, it would be more of an opportunity to show who they are as individual characters, rather than to show their chemistry as a duo. In particular, I feel like having the two of them in the show could be an opportunity to use them in a unique way. Because the two of them are visually less intimidating than many of the others, I feel like it would be too easy to make them the comic relief of the season. So, I want to take them in a different direction. I could see a world where the two of them end up as the antagonists of the season. And their motivations wouldn't be too out of nowhere. For Dan, since many people on the internet clown him for being in 7 episodes of Season 1 yet not doing anything consequential, Dan would be determined to show the world that he's capable of making an impact on a season, even if it's in a nefarious way. And for Drew, he could be upset over the fact that Brett took advantage of him by stealing his notebook, so now he's determined to not let people take advantage of him ever again. Yes, it might seem kind of weird that these two end up being the ones to mess up the other teams, but I feel like it's a more interesting route to take than to just have them be comic relief characters or as early boot fodder. That's really the point that I want to make with this selection. If you have characters that have room for development and a good story, why not use them to tell a good story? For as long as this venture camp has been around, there are plenty of characters who could have a fulfilling story in a show like Race to the Place, even characters who weren't directly a part of the main show, such as the next people on this list. The next team on this list might seem out of nowhere, and I honestly forgot about this duo when I first started making my list. But I do think there's some merit in having Anika and Molly compete on a season of Race to the Place. Now, I get why most people might not be too enthusiastic about seeing them again, considering that we only got a chance to see them in one episode and the primary focus of the episode wasn't necessarily them. That being said, I feel like there's enough personality there that you could find a way to build a compelling story arc for them to go through while on Race to the Place. And besides, the motivation for them to compete would definitely be there. After all, it didn't seem like their show was getting much traction online, so you could easily say that they wanted to compete so that they could promote their show and potentially win some money that would allow them to continue filming their show for a little bit longer without being worried about going broke. However, if they're going to be on the show, I want to use their screen time to dive further into their relationship. Since they were only in one episode of a spin-off series, there's so much information about them and their relationship that we don't know about. How did they meet? How did they get into investigating anomalies? What are their individual qualities? And most importantly, what is their relationship dynamic like? These are questions that would help explain more of their backstory and help establish the depth of their characters, especially with the last question about their relationship dynamic. In their one episode, the most that we saw of their relationship was how Anika questioned Molly's attitude towards Marcus, and Anika questioning Molly's dedication to the show, followed by the two of them making up and continuing on like nothing happened. Is this a common occurrence for the two of them? Do they have other arguments like this one? And how will they fare as they deal with the stresses of being on a reality show? I think having them on the show to answer these questions would be good for their characters, while also allowing the creators to explore the nuances of an established relationship and the obstacles that they have to work past as a couple on a daily basis. I think that would be an interesting thing to explore. Yes, I know that it might seem easy to give the spotlight to two people who haven't had much time to shine, but I think it's a fair thing to do as long as there's potential for good writing. And for characters like Anika and Molly who have a pre-existing relationship without much depth, there's definitely room for the two of them to be given a story to expand upon their relationship. It's a beauty to have these kinds of pre-existing relationships that allow for writing opportunities. However, with the right people, there's also the opportunity for good writing to come from a pairing without a super solid pre-existing relationship, such as the last pairing on this list. The final pairing on this list is definitely going to raise some eyebrows, and I'll admit it's a long shot. But this pairing intrigues me so much that I'm willing to put forward the mental effort needed to justify it. This pairing is the oh-so-fantastical duo of Nick Milton and Tess Morgan. Now before you freak out, yes, I understand that these two have literally never interacted, neither on the show nor off the show. But these two are connected by something that I think could serve as the basis for a somewhat unique pairing. And that something is the fact that according to a greeting from Muhammad Kamara, Nick has a crush on Tess. I'll link the greeting in the description. But of course, it doesn't make sense for the two of them to be paired up solely because of that. It'd be an awkward pairing if the two of them were paired up based on that relation. So, I'm going to add a little bit of in-season writing to justify putting them together. Here's the kicker. Nick and Tess aren't going to start off being paired with each other. I'm going to pair up Nick with James, since Nick has mentioned that he and James are friends through social media. And I'll pair up Tess with Hunter, since I don't think Hunter canonically has a job yet, so he'll probably be more hungry for the cash prize than Ali would. The early stages of the competition would set the stage for Nick and Tess to eventually get together as a pairing. Nick would ask James for advice on how to deal with his crush on Tess, and James would draw on his experience with Aiden, telling Nick that he should be careful about how he approaches Tess, since she could easily be turned away by his demeanor. As for Tess and Hunter, perhaps Hunter suggests forming an alliance with Nick and James, since James and Hunter seem to be at least cordial with each other in their limited interactions. This would allow Tess's opinions of Nick to come out, and my guess is that she views Nick as someone questionable, assuming that he's a bit arrogant due to his lavish lifestyle. But partway through the season, both duos end up fracturing for reasons outside the game. Perhaps James attempts to take a selfie in a dangerous place, ends up falling, getting injured, and leaves via a medical evacuation. At the same time, Hunter gets a call from home, telling him that he was offered a position for his dream job. Perhaps it's a job in strategy game development, which he canonically loves. This sudden event forces Hunter to leave the show in order to start work on time. So with both James and Hunter gone, the show sees this as an opportunity to do something crazy and pair Nick and Tess together as a team, creating a new, interesting interaction, introducing a new twist into the game, while ensuring that the season still has the necessary amount of teams to keep the season on schedule. From here, Nick and Tess's interactions would produce a clear effect on their perception of the other person. For example, let's say that Tess tries to step up and take a leadership role, as she assumes that she needs to be a bit assertive in order to keep someone as arrogant as Nick in line. However, this assertiveness causes Nick to become even more attracted to Tess. This attraction would then cause Nick to be more meek, fumble and start making silly mistakes, based entirely on his nervousness and his desire to not do anything to upset Tess. However, by seeing Nick being less arrogant and stuck up than she originally thought he would be, Tess would start to rethink her perception of Nick, which would lead to her starting to appreciate Nick's efforts and presence as her partner. Now before we go any further, I want to make one thing clear. I am absolutely not pitching that Nick and Tess become romantic partners. Let's remember that not every interaction between two characters means that they have to be romantically involved. Trust me, I saw the drama unfold online when Hannah and Benji openly stated that they considered each other as siblings. It was an ugly brawl. Anyways, back to the topic. I can see their bond progress to the point where as Nick begins to see more of Tessa's personality, he comes to realize that although he does have feelings for her, he also knows that Tess probably wouldn't enjoy living the overly sophisticated life that he lives, and that he couldn't live the simpler life that Tess lives, so a relationship wouldn't work anyways. So, Nick would keep his feelings to himself all the way to the finale. And while Nick and Tess are sitting on the loser's bench waiting for the finalists to get to the end of the race, Nick nervously admits to Tess that he had a crush on her for a while, to which Tess would cheekily admit that she knew the whole time, and that Nick wasn't subtle. Even though Nick would be slightly embarrassed, the two of them would agree to remain friends, concluding a story of two people who started with different perceptions of each other, learned more about each other after being forced to work together, and ending as two friends and nothing more than that. Some people might not like that ending, but there's more to life than romance. Not every story has to end with the two main characters ending up together. But of course, we don't even know if Race to the Place will become an actual show, and if I had to guess, I'd probably lean towards it not becoming a reality. But I think it's fun to consider the possibility of this kind of show coming to life, and the familiar faces that we could see taking part in it. Sure, maybe if we had duos like Connor and Alec, James and Aiden, or Ellie and Gabby, we might get more of the existing fanbase interested in the season, but to some degree, I feel like these duos have story arcs that are more or less wrapped up, and I would want to give more focus to pairings that still have some stories left to be told. But hey, if we get a season of Race to the Place and these duos take part in it, I won't complain. And that about does it for this video. What did you think of the video? Do you agree with my choices? Do you disagree? Which pairings would you like to see in a potential Race to the Place season? Either way, please let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. Thank you very much for watching. Click like if you like the video, click subscribe if you really like the video, and for some ending words of wisdom. If you're going to start a career as a content creator, make sure there's plenty of room for content to be made, or else you could end up making videos about haunted meatloaf. Thank you, and farewell.